Welcome to our 6th class on the book of Ruth here at theyeshiva.net. I'm going to begin with an anecdote that connects with one of our themes this evening. They tell the story about passengers who are sitting on an airplane and they're ready to roll. Suddenly, 2 people come in, they're dressed like the pilots, and they're making their way into the cockpit. But as the passengers on the airplane take a look at them, they are a little bit unnerved. Both of them appear to be blind. They're walking with sticks that blind people use in order to navigate and find their way through the darkness. In the beginning, the passengers thought it was a cute joke that somebody was pulling on them, but sure enough, both of these blind pilots go into the cockpit, they close the door, they sit down. The passengers still thought it was some type of comedy show. But sure enough, the engine goes on and the announcements resonate throughout the airplane about, not making fires in the bathroom and not burning down the airplane and not jumping over the airplane and fastening your seatbelts, of course, and so on and so forth. I don't have to tell all of you who are probably experienced with the airplanes. And the announcements finish, and the plane starts moving. And within a few minutes, the plane is on the runway. And now people are really getting anxious and nervous. There's murmuring, there's talking, there's schmoozing, there are prayers, there are fears, there is a lot of inner turbulence. Within a few moments, the plane is on the runway, going faster and faster and faster. And as you know, often airports are right near the water. Within a few seconds, the plane is going to go right into the water. And the whole crowd starts screaming, "Ah!" And as they're screaming, as the plane is about to plunge into the sea, it takes off. It's in the air. And at that moment, one pilot turns to the other pilot and he says, I'm really afraid that one day they're actually going to scream a little too late and we're going to end up in the water. We have been exploring the tremendous controversy around the Jewish identity of the impoverished Moabite convert Ruth. And as a result, the tremendous controversy concerning all of her descendants, including her son Oved, her grandson Yishai, and her great-grandson, who would become the most famous king of Israel, David HaMelech, King David. Although Boaz, the great judge and leader of Israel, marries Ruth, based on the halacha, on the law, Amoini v'lo yamoinis, mayavi v'lo mayav, is the prohibition for an Ammonite or Moabite convert to marry a regular Jewish spouse, a regular Jewish person, only applies to males, not females. Yet, even generations later in the time of David, there is a personality, Doeg HaDoimi, who inspires or actually evokes this question: is David Roy Love Bakal? Is David worthy of entering into the Jewish community as a regular, ordinary Jew, due to the fact that he comes from Ruth, who is a Moabite, upon whom the Torah says in Deuteronomy in Dvarim, Kiseitse, Lo Yavai Amoini Mayavi Bekahal Hashem ad oilam, forever. An Ammonite and a Moabite cannot marry a regular Jewish woman or we would think maybe also Jewish husband. And it was resolved only in the yeshiva, in the Beis Midrash, the Gemara in Yevamos, Daf Ayin Vav, Amid Beis, Yevamos 76b, when a man named Yisra, Chagar Artzmai ki Yishmaeli, he girded himself with a sword like a Yishmaelite. And he declared that Mikublani mi Beis Dinai shel Shmuel Aramasi, I have received the tradition from the court of Shmuel, the great judge and prophet, that the prohibition for a Moabite or Ammonite to marry a Jewish woman only applies to the men, not to the women, as discussed at length in the previous class on Ruth, class number 5, as well as class number 4. We discussed at length the explanation of the brisker of Reb Velvela Brisker, Reb Yitzchak Zeva Levi Soloveitchik, and the Ben Yehoyada by Rabbeinu Yosef Chaim of Baghdad, explaining what was the nature of the controversy, what was the debate, as discussed at length. Today we continue this fascinating and dramatic narrative, and we try to uncover the mystery behind another story, and then to understand the reason for providence producing the Davidic dynasty, the dynasty of Jewish royalty, in such an enigmatic and incomprehensible and morally questionable way, as we will see. There is a very strange story in the Tanakh, which at first glance is very difficult to understand. This has to do with the book of Shmuel, Shmuel Aleph, Shmuel 1, chapter 16, dealing with the coronation of David as a Jewish king in the lifetime of Shaul. God sends Shmuel the prophet to go coronate and anoint one of Yishai's children as a king. Yishai comes to the city of Beis. Shmuel comes to the city of Beis Lechem, and he invites Yishai and his children to a meal. Afterwards, Shmuel, knowing that he is to coronate, he is to anoint one of Yishai's children as a king, he starts with the first, goes to the second, and if you open up source number 1 in your curriculum, right below the PDF, the pasuk says in Shmuel Aleph Perek Tezayin, Vayaver Yishai Shivas Bonav Lifnei Shmuel. Yishai passed his 7 sons before Shmuel. Vayomer Shmuel El Yishai LeBochar Hashem Be'ela. Shmuel tells Yishai, God did not choose any of them. Vayomer Shmuel El Yishai. Shmuel tells Yishai, Hatamu Anarim. Are your children finished? Did you show me all of them? Vayomer Yishai says, Oichar HaKotan. The little one still remains, V'hine Roye Batsoin, and he's shepherding the flock. And the commentators are wondering about 2 major questions. Shmuel invited Yishai and all of his children to a feast. Yishai brought all of his children. Why didn't he bring David? Was David not one of his children? When Shmuel asks him, are all your children gone? He says, one is left and he's not here. Oh, the whole family was invited to a feast, as the Tanakh describes earlier in chapter 16 of Shmuel 1, the book of Shmuel 1. The whole family was invited. One child is still shepherding the flock. Question number 2. Shmuel asks Yishai to see all of his children. He passes through 7 children. Shmuel says God did not choose anybody. There's the whole story there. You can look it up, of how he thought it was number 1, and it wasn't number 1, and he thought number 2, and so forth. Then Shmuel says, Hatamu Anarim, are all finished? He says there's one more. Why didn't David merit to be passed with his other 7 brothers? Shmuel had to ask him if everybody is finished. Why did he think everybody is finished? Because Yishai said, here are my boys, that's it. So Shmuel says, that's it? So Yishai says, oh, one more remains. Why was number 8 not included in the list of the children? Shmuel is the one who says, Atamu Aniyarim, are they all finished? Why did he think they're all finished? Because Yishai didn't introduce David. What happened? Something amiss. Something very strange here. Of course, the rabbis, always sensitive to nuance, have transmitted a fascinating tradition, a very intriguing story, at first glance very difficult to comprehend, and this is what we're going to explore tonight. I want to share with you the source of this Midrash. We're going to learn it inside the source of this Midrash. The source of this Midrash is not in Midrash Rabbah, which is the traditional source of Midrash. It's not in Talmud. However, it's quoted in a compilation of traditions and Midrashim known as Yalkut HaMechiri on the book of Tehillim, chapter 118 of Tehillim. Yalkut HaMechiri was authored by the great French sage who lived in southern France in the 14th century. In southern France, his name was Reb Machir Bereb Abba Mari, Rabbi Machir, the son of Abba Mari. He quotes this Midrash. The Midrash is quoted also in Toras HaMincha, which was authored by a student of the Rashba, Rabbeinu Shloime ben Aderes, the great Spanish sage. The author of Toras HaMincha is Rabbi Yaakov Skili. He lives also in the 14th century. He's born in Italy, and then he travels to Cordova in Spain. He becomes a student of the Rashba, Rabbi Yaakov Skili, Teres HaMincha, 14th century. He also quotes this Midrash. The Midrash is quoted by the great Kabbalist, Rabbeinu Shloime El Kabitz from Tzfas, also from the exiles of Spain who ended up in the Holy Land in Tzfas. He is the composer of Lechadoidi, which we say Friday night. He's the brother-in-law of the Ramak, Rabbeinu Moshe Cordovero, the great Kabbalist living in the 16th century in Tzfas, Reb Shloime El Kabitz, who authored a book on Rus called Shoresh Yishai, the root of Yishai. The Midrash is quoted in his name in Yalkut Mayam Loyes. It's quoted in Shar HaGilgulim of the Arizal, the portal of reincarnation, authored by the Arizal, the greatest Kabbalist, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, 16th century Sfas, written by his student Rabbi Chaim Vital. He quotes the story. The story is quoted with an explanation in Asara Mamoris, the great Kabbalistic work by Rabbeinu Menachem Azariah Fanu of Italy. It's quoted by the Chidor Reb Chaim Yosef David Azuloi in his book Maris Ayin. It's quoted by the Alter Rebbe Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi the Balatanya in Lekutei Torah. Parshas V'zois HaBrocha, the Maimer Mizmor Shir Chanukas Abayis LeDavid, who also explains it, even though, and there's a footnote there, that from the Talmud and the Midrash, one may intimate a message that's a story that's different than the story. It's quoted in the explanation of the Vilna Gaon, Biur HaGran, Shulchan Aruch in Yoreh Deah, as I'm soon going to discuss, and in other works. I'm bringing all these sources because it's important when you come across such a medrash to know how frequently it's quoted in the sources of some of the most authoritative sages and rabbis in our history. Open up source number 2. We're going to learn the medrash inside. We have here the version quoted in the first source. I quoted Yalkut HaMechiri on Tehillim, chapter Kuf Yud Ches, Zak the Medrash. Source number 2. Yishai Roish LeSanhedrin Hoya. Yishai was the leader of the Sanhedrin, which means he was one of the most important spiritual figures and scholars of the Jewish nation in his time. He's the head of the Sanhedrin, which is the court of 71 members, the most powerful, central authority of the Jewish people. He separated from his wife. The Gemara in Baba Basra of Tzaddik Aleph identifies his wife as Netzeves. He separates from his wife for 3 years. After 3 years, Yishai had a maid, a beautiful maid, and he desired her. Amarla, he told her, Biti, my daughter, Tikni Atzmei Halayla. Prepare yourself for tonight, Kedei Shetikonsi Elai Beget Shichrur, so that you should be able to marry me, Beget Shichrur, after I will give you a document that frees you. She was a non-Jewish maidservant, which served in Yishai's home. So he says, I'm going to give you a get shichrur, which is a document that sets you free. As a result, according to Jewish law, you become a full Jewess, and we will marry. Holcha hashivcha va'amra legvirta. The maid went and told the story to her master, to Yishai's wife. She told her, Hatzili atzmach v'nafshi v'adoini megehenim. Save yourself and myself and my master from purgatory. Amra Allah, her master tells her, Matam, why? Sachala es hakoil. She told her the whole story. In other words, first, the maid just told her, save us all from hell. So he says, why? She told her the whole story. Yishai came to her and asked her to do so and so. Amra Allah, the wife of Yishai, tells her maid, Biti, my daughter, what should I do? It's been 3 years in which we didn't have relations. Amra Allah, her maid, says, I'm going to give you an advice. Go prepare yourself for intimacy. Whatever you have to do, mikveh, whatever it is, physically, spiritually. I will also do the same. Ula erev at night, when he will tell me, his maid, go lock the door. I'm going to go to lock the door. Tikonsi at va'etzeyani. When I go to lock the door, I'll open the door, you'll come in, I'm going to go out. It's obviously going to be dark in the room. You'll go into the bedroom, I'll leave. So that's what she did. Le'erev, night comes. The maid gets up and she extinguishes the flame, the fire. She comes to lock the door. Her master goes into the room and the maid leaves. That night, the wife, who is, so to speak, representing the maid in Yishai's imagination, becomes impregnated. She conceives a boy who will become David, King David. This is what happens this night. I'm now going to give some parenthetical, interesting footnotes. The Chida, the great 18th century rabbi, scholar, prolific writer, Kabbalist, Reb Chaim Yosef David Azulai, in his book Maris Ha'ayin, writes in the name of Gurei Ha'ari, in the name of the lions of the Arizal, the students of Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the great Arizal of the 16th century in Tzvas, that the maid of Yishai was a reincarnation of Hagar, the Egyptian maid of Sarah, and therefore she came to rectify the mistake that Hagar made. Hagar, the Torah says in the book of Genesis, treated Sarah with lightheadedness, with scorn. She denigrated Sarah. Her reincarnation, the maid of Yishai, rectified it, and therefore she preserved the honor of her master, and she revealed to her the whole story, and afterwards she kept it as a secret, as we're soon going to see. That's point number one, very interesting. The maid is a reincarnation of Hagar. The second thing, the Midrash has a few versions, different versions, with some differences. No major differences, but a few differences. I'm quoting one version from Yalkut HaMechiri. I gave you before the references to the other versions. In some Midrashim it says, not only it was dark in the room and she went out and she let Yishai's wife come in, but Yishai's wife dressed up as the maid. In the Chida's words, Shinsa atzma b'levush hashivcha. She put on the cloaks of the maid. Why am I mentioning this? Because it's interesting that this has dramatic ramifications in Jewish law. Parenthetically, the Ramah, Rabbeinu Moshe Isserlish, and Shulchan Aruch Yeridei Siman Kuf Nun Zayin discusses the following scenario. It's not a very nice scenario, but it's the following scenario, and that is Misha liboy helatina v'choshech be'eshes ish. Im tuchal ishtay lavayala v'sheyizbar sheba'ala erva shari. If a man is in a bad place and he starts experiencing promiscuous cravings to a woman, another woman, not his wife, a woman who's married, and his wife doesn't know what to do. So the Ramah paskins, the Ramah gives us halach. If his wife can position herself that he will think that she is the other woman, it's permissible to do so. The Bir Hagra, the explanation of the Vilna Gaon on that halach in Yeridei Kuf Nun Zayin, he writes two words: Ku'uvda de Yishai, like the story of Yishai. What's the source of this halach? The Hagra says Ku'uvda de Yishai, the story of Yishai. What's the story of Yishai? He wanted to have relations with the maid. His wife dressed up like the shivcha, like the maid. He thought it was the shivcha. It's fine. Halachically, it's permissible. What happens now? Yishai had relations with his wife. She's pregnant. With whom? With a child who's David. Now look at the continuation of the Midrash. L'tes chadashim. 9 months come. And it's very obvious that Yishai's wife is pregnant. What does Yishai believe? He never divorced his wife. He separated from her. He never divorced her. She's pregnant. This means, unfortunately, it seems like she committed adultery. And the child she's carrying in her womb will have the status of a mamzer, a bastard child. This is a child who's born of one of the arayis, which means a promiscuous, immoral relationship. The woman lived with another man while she was married to her husband Yishai. Yishai, of course, doesn't know that night he was not with his maid, he was with his wife. He doesn't know that. He thinks he was with his maid. So both the woman is an adulteress, Yishai's wife, and her child is a mamzer. From another husband, supposedly we don't know, because Yishai believes he never impregnated his wife. So now continue the Midrash. Letes chadashim, 9 months pass, bikshu banel ohergav as b'na David. Her children want to kill her. They want to kill her son. Their father stops them. They never do it. But this is their sentiment. They're feeling horrible about both of them. They feel that there is a immorality entrenched in their home. The secret was kept for 28 years. Nobody knew. Nobody knew the truth. Only 2 people knew. 2 women. Yishai's wife and Yishai's maid. Yishai didn't know the truth. None of his 7 sons knew the truth. Everybody believed David came from their mother, but from another father. And he was a mamzer, and she was an Eishesish, an adulterous woman. Now, you'll understand a very strange pasuk in Tehillim, Samach Tes. What does David HaMelech say? Listen to these words. Muzar ha'yisi le'echoi v'nochri libnei imi. I was a stranger to my brothers and an alien to the sons of my mother. Muzar is very similar to mamzer. I was a stranger. I was alienated. Why? Why was he alienated from his brothers? Very simple. He was a half a brother, but they looked at him as an illegal child. In other words, his closest family members, his siblings, Bnei Imi, the sons of my mother, alienated him completely. They didn't want to have to do with him. And that's why he calls them Bnei Imi, because they didn't believe they have the same father. They only have the same mother, because they believe that she committed adultery and he's the child of another father, not their father. There's another pasuk in Tehillim. Now we will understand. Tehillim Nun Aleph, Tehillim 51. I was conceived in sin, and through transgression, my mother gave birth to me. This was the conception. There was a tremendous sin. There was transgression. His mother never said the story. She didn't want to embarrass her maid. Look, she didn't want to embarrass her husband, who had one plan, and his plan was betrayed because he separated from his wife. She didn't want to anger her husband. She didn't want to embarrass her maid. The maid didn't tell the story. She didn't want to embarrass her master, Yishai, or his wife. Nobody told the story. 28 years. Continue the Midrash now. Let's continue further in source number 2. Now, 28 years later, God sends Shmuel HaNavi to anoint a new king. Kivan Shamaleh Kadosh Baruch Hu Shmuel. God tells Shmuel, Lechesh lechachel Beis Yishai halachmi. Go, I'm going to send you to the house of Yishai in Beis Lechem. Kivan shahalach. When Shmuel came there, Hikriv layas Eliyav. Yishai brought him his oldest son, Eliyav. Kivan Shirao. When Shmuel HaNavi saw Eliyav, Amar, he said, Ach neged Hashem Mashiach. Here stands Mashiach, the anointed one. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu al tabit es l'almareyu. God said, don't look at his face, don't look at his countenance. Ha'adam yirei le'nayim Hashem yirei le'lev. God, people see the externals. God sees the heart. He's not the king. Yishai brought his 2nd son, his 3rd son, all his 7 sons, and all of them, Shmuel was told by the Almighty that these are not the suitable candidates for royalty. So Shmuel asks Yishai, are all your children finished? Amar loy tamu. In the Midrash, Yishai told him, yes, I don't have any more children. Now you understand why he told him, I don't have any more children? I don't have any more children. Yishai did not believe he has any more children. Amar loy, Shmuel says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Amar li, Leich vesh lechachel Yishai v'ato imer li tamu. God told me I should come to the house of Yishai to anoint one of his children as a monarch. And you tell me you have no more children? There's something amiss here, my dear friend of Yishai. Amar loy. So Yishai told him, there's one more. He's part of the family, but he's not my child. He's shepherding the flock. Now you understand why Yishai didn't bring him with the rest of the brothers. Now you understand why Yishai didn't have him pass with the other 7 children. He's not Yishai's child, he's Yishai's wife's child. On the contrary, he was conceived in sin. Muzara yisi le'echai v'nachri libnei imi. A mamzer. But Shmuel insisted, no more in the family. He says, there's one more. He's not here. He's shepherding the flock. Amar lo shlach ve'eviyoi. Shmuel said, go and bring him. Kivon sheba. When David came from the flock, hischil Hashem and mevatzpitz v'yoyle. The oil with which a king was anointed, the shemen, the oil with which he would anoint a king, it started to bubble. It started to simmer, to rise. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Shmuel. You're standing, my anointed one is standing. Go and anoint him as the king because he is the one. You have Yishai, you have 7 children, 28 years they believed that this brother was a mamzer, a bastard child, born from adultery because of something their mother did immorally, with complete promiscuity. And suddenly they were all disqualified from royalty. This David, who was in the field, wasn't even with the brothers. He was an outcast. They wanted to kill him at one point. He's anointed. Yishayu bonav hayu oimdin bereses ve'ema. Yishai and his 7 sons were standing with complete awe and fear. They were trembling. Amru, they said, Loi Bashmuel, Ela Levazaisenu, Loi Diali Yisrael Shesh Ben Pasel. Perhaps it seems that Shmuel came to publicize the truth that one of our children is blemished. We got, sometimes you think certain families, they're perfect families. And then you realize the family also has some issues. This beautiful, majestic, prominent Jewish family has a child who's Pasel. There was one person who knew the truth. The mother of David HaMelech was happy inside, but sad on the outside. But at that moment, the mother of David said that famous pasuk. We say in Tehillim, we say in Hallel. What does it mean? The stone that the builders rejected became the peak of the building of the mansion. Sometimes that little stone, nobody looks at it. Masu haboinim, that steindel, that little stone becomes the top. It becomes the head of Pina, it becomes the cornerstone. Rosh Pina is the cornerstone of the structure. Habonim ksiv, you could read haboinim, you could read it habonim. There are no vowels in the Tanakh, in the written Tanakh. Even masu habonim. The stone, the child, that Maasu Abonim, that all my other children disgraced, they rejected. They felt he was vile. Amra, she said, Even is a ben. Shemasu Aischa Achecha Isel Roshpina Lisa Al Kulam. You child that has been disgusted, that has been rejected by his brothers. You now rose to become the cornerstone. You rose above all of them. This pasuk was said at his mother. Amru la baneha. Her children turned to her and they said, May Eis Hashem haisazais. This was orchestrated by God. Lefichach, therefore, everybody said together, Zeh hayoim asa Hashem nagila v'nismechabai. This day was made by God as a festivity. Let's dance and rejoice in it. So the sequence of psukim and the Hallel and Tehillim Kuf Yud Ches. She says, the mother, Even Maasu Aboinim Haisel Roshpina. The brothers say, Me'eis Hashem Haisel Zois Hi Niflas Ba'inenu. This came only from God, who completely defies our imagination. It's wonders beyond wonders. We could have never known this. Together, everybody said, Zeh Hayom Asa Hashem Nagila V'Nismechabai. And the rest, as we know, is history. And I ask you a question. Yishai is the head of the Sanhedrin? This is how he behaves? If there was ever an example of hypocrisy in its most vile form, you have it here. The Midrash puts it together. Yishai Rosh Sanhedrin, the head of the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin represents the ethical and moral representative, the ethical and moral body representing Jewish tradition, morality, and law. This is how he behaves. Separates from his wife for 3 years. Why? Then his mate. Why did he put his mate in this position? What's happening here? Why did he do this? Based on the previous 2 classes, you'll understand it very well, very clearly. Based on the explanation of class 5, the discussion of class 4, we'll understand this very clearly. And I love learning inside, so we'll have source number 3, open up source number 3. We're going to quote the explanation the way it's been discussed in the famous Kabbalistic work, Asara Ma'amaris, 10 Utterances, by one of the greatest Kabbalists, the 17th century Italian Kabbalist, Rabbeinu Menachem Azaria Fanu, in the city in Italy. The Ramemi Panu, as he's known. In Asara Ma'amaris, Maimer Chikur Din, Perek Gimel, Maimer Chikur Din Chele Gimel Perek Yud, the 3rd section, chapter 10, Zokte Helik Ramemi Panu, Ramemi Fanu. Amru Alav Ba'agod. They tell the story about Yishai in Midrash. She Yishai aviv biziknosoi hayapoidish meishtai. Yishai, David HaMelech's father, when he became older, he separated from his wife. Vein safek etzleinu. There's no doubt in my mind, shahaya mimidas chasidis. The reason he separated from his wife was not because he didn't cherish his wife, he didn't respect his wife. On the contrary, he felt that he was unworthy for his wife. It was mimidas chasidis, it came out of his piety. Shema Mashamra Torah lo yavi amayni mayavi pirush mayavi va'afilu mayavis shekain halacha zu ha'yisarei fefes biyad oisi ador. Perhaps when the Torah prohibited an Ammonite and a Moabite from marrying a Jewish person, it includes even a woman Moabite, which means Ruth was not allowed to marry Boaz, which means that the children and descendants of Ruth are not allowed to marry a regular Jewish woman or husband. And I come from Ruth, Yishai. Yishai was Ruth's grandson. His father was Ruth's son. How can I do this to my wife? I can't do this to her. It's a married family. They have 7 sons. Yishai thought the best thing is he separated. Within intimacy, he was separated from her. And the Rameh says, because this law was weak, it was shaky in that generation. That generation was still unclear in the law. How can that happen? Last week we explained the Brisker Rav's explanation in Chidush Agriz in Rus, that they believed that the law Mayavi v'loy Mayavis was derived from one of the Midas Sha'atayr Nidreshes Ben, one of the formulas of Moshe Rabbeinu, and therefore it could be delegitimized by another Bezdin. Later, it was Yisro revealed from Shmuel that it was a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that's irrefutable by any Bezdin. But at this point, the halacha was still weak. It was unsure. So Yishai, although he married this woman and had children, when he got older, I guess, he became a little more stringent or became a little more worried. They say it happens to people when they get older. Or he decided to be more stringent and he separated from his wife. Not because of her issue, because of his issue. Till Yisro the Yishmaelite, who was the son-in-law of Yishai. Yisro, you remember, married Yishai's daughter Avigail. And he came to the Beis Midrash and he etched the sword in the Beis Midrash and he established the halacha that it only applies to a Moabite man, not to a Moabite woman, which he heard from the Bezdin of Shmuel. Yishai was a tzaddik, so even though this was the halacha, he was concerned. Because it's before the story of his son-in-law putting the sword into the Beis Midrash, he was concerned. So he separated from his wife. Why? Maybe he did something wrong. Maybe Ruth was not allowed to marry a Jewish man, and he's not allowed to marry a Jewish woman, and his children are not allowed to marry Jewish women. Yet, the Torah underscores the value of continuously having children, even later. Even when you have children, to have as many as you can. To fulfill that, he decided that let him be with his maid, his shifcha. But here's the problem. Here is the halachic problem. She was a shifcha knainis. She was a non-Jewish maid who came to serve in his home. Now, the halacha, the biblical laws about servants, slaves, maidservants, was whether a non-Jewish servant, a male non-Jewish servant, or a female servant, there were certain obligations they had as they were serving in a Jewish home, but if they were set free, they became full Jews. It's a fascinating thing. The non-Jewish servant working in the Jewish home, or the non-Jewish female servant working in the Jewish home, as long as they were servants, they had a semi-Jewish status, but not full Jews. If they would be liberated, set free, they're full Jews. Says Rabbi Menachem Azariah, finally, listen what he did. Mistabril, it's logical. Yishai decided to have relations with her after he liberated her with a condition. What's the condition? If the Torah really says mayavi v'loy mayavis, in other words, a Moabite woman is allowed to marry a Jewish man, hareyat ben chayrin, then I'm setting you free. Then you're free. So if you're free, you're a regular Jewish woman, because once a shifcha, once a maid is set free by her master, she's a regular Jewish woman. If you're a regular Jewish woman, I can marry you. I can have relations with you. Why not? If Ruth was allowed to marry a Jewish man, mayavi v'loy mayavis, I could be with you. But if the law is mayavi, and even a mayavis, a Moabite convert, is also not allowed to marry into the Jewish faith for eternity, ein bidvarai klum. My words are meaningless. You're not set free. Sharei vadon bevadon muter k'detlenin ba'asara yuchsin. When you have two members of the Jewish faith who are not allowed to marry regular Jews for whatever reason, they're allowed to marry each other, as the Gemara says in Kiddushin. For example, a Moabite convert is allowed to marry a shifcha, is allowed to marry a non-Jewish maid who has a semi-Jewish status. Vadon bevadon mutter. So he could be with her. So this is the condition he made. If it's mayavi v'loy mayavis, so Ruth has a full regular status of a Jew, then he sets her free, so she's a regular Jewish woman. If not, she's a shifcha, and if she's a shifcha, it's fine. He's allowed to marry a shifcha because he's in the status of a Moabite. Vadon bevadon mutter. When you have two members of the Jewish people that both have an issue with marrying an ordinary Jew, they can marry each other. Mele is allowed to be with the shifcha. This was the condition he made. So it works legally. You could make a condition. If this is the law, you're free. If it's not the law, you're not free. Now he adds something. And this I need to give a little introduction so you should be able to appreciate what he's saying. The law in Judaism is that a child who's born from a female servant, a shivcha, or from a female non-Jew, follows the mother. Usually in Jewish law, havlad hoylech acher apogum, the child follows the one who is blemished, whether it's the father or the mother. But in two cases, the child follows the status of the mother exclusively. If the mother is not Jewish, or the mother is a maidservant, then it follows the mother. So for example, A mamzer who marries a regular Jewish woman, he's not allowed to, but if he does, the child will not follow the mother. Havlad hailech achar hapogam, the child will be a mamzer, or conversely. But what happens if a mamzer, a Jewish mamzer, has intimacy with a non-Jewish woman? The child will follow the mother. The child will be non-Jewish. Now, if this child converts, the child is a regular Jew, not a mamzer, not a mamzeres. Why? Because the child follows the mother. The mother is not a mamzer. The mother is not Jewish. If the child converts, the child is a full Jew. You see, if the mamzer would have married a regular Jewish woman, or would have married a mamzeres, the child hoilech acher apogam, the child follows the blemished part of the lineage, whether it's the father or the mother, no difference. In other words, that gene is still there in the child. You can't get rid of your father or your mother's genes. But if the child is living as a child of a female who's a goy, who's not Jewish, or a maidservant, that gene defines the child, so the child is not a mamzer, the child is a goy, is a non-Jew. His mother is not Jewish. If he converts, he's a regular Jew. He's a ger. He's not a mamzer anymore. And that's why, as the famous Mishnah Masechta Kedushin says, Reb Tarfon says, there's a great eitzah for a mamzer. What's the eitzah for a mamzer? What should a mamzer do? A mamzer should marry a shivcha knainis, should marry a maid, a non-Jewish maid who's in a Jewish home. And then what happens? The child of this couple is not a mamzer, it follows the mother, so the child is an eved, a servant, and if he's set free by the master, he's a regular Jew. He's not a mamzer anymore. Okay, that's one thing you have to understand. So usually the child follows the gene of the father or the mother, and if one is blemished, it continues to the child, besides two exceptions, if the mother is a non-Jew, or the mother is a non-Jewish maid who's working and living in a Jewish home. Introduction number 2 you have to understand is what I mentioned before, vada'on bevada'on mutter, which means a Moabite convert is allowed to marry not a regular Jew, but could marry a Jewish woman who converted from another faith, can marry a shivcha, can marry a shivcha which was liberated. The same is true, a mamzer can marry a giyoris, a female who was converted, can marry a shivcha, can marry a shivcha that was liberated. A mamzeres can marry a Moabite man who converted. You understand? Any person who has a challenge with their status in marrying a regular Jew, they can marry each other. They can marry each other. What's the reason for this? It says, an Amman and a Moabite cannot enter into the Kahal Hashem. Kahal Geidim Mushachrarim Ikri Kahal. Converts and liberated slaves or maidservants are not called a community. They're individuals. So it says an Ammonite and a Moabite doesn't have to do with racism. Not at all. Understand this. An Ammonite and a Moabite cannot marry B'Kahal Hashem. They cannot marry the community of God. So they cannot marry an ordinary Jew. But let's say a convert is an ordinary Jew in the sense that they have full status as any other Jew, but they're not part of a kohal. They're individuals. So therefore a Moabite man can marry a female convert. A mamzer can marry a female convert. The same is true with slaves or servants. A Moabite can marry a shivcha. He can even marry a shivcha after she was set free because she's not part of the kahal Hashem. Kahal geidim u'meshachrarim la'ikri kahal. Converts and liberated servants or maidservants are not called kahal. Now let's go back to the story. What did Yishai do according to Rabbi Menachem Azariah? He liberated his maidservant with a condition. The condition is, if Ruth was a regular woman, mayavi v'lay mayavis, you're free. You're free. If Ruth has the problem of marrying a regular Jew, and therefore I also, you're not free, you're a shivcha. So therefore, I could marry you. Now he continues, even though a mamzer is permitted to marry a female convert, or a female non-Jewish servant who was liberated, and a Moabite male may also marry A female servant who was liberated, they call Gadim and Mushachrarim lo yikri kol. The prohibition is lo yaveh b'kahal Hashem. But the community of Gadim and Mushachrarim, liberated slaves or maidservants, is not called a kol. So a Moabite convert can marry a maidservant who was liberated and became a Jew. Can also marry a Jewess who converted from any faith. So why did Yishai have to keep her as a maidservant? That's his question. Even if there's a problem with Mayavis, and therefore he's not allowed to marry a regular Jewish woman, he could still marry a Shifcha that was set free. So why did he make this condition? Gewaltige question. He could have just set her free. He had to set her free. Why? Just in case. Mayavi v'loy Mayavis, so he's a regular Jew, so he can't marry a Shifcha, so he had to set her free. But why did he have to make a condition? Even if he is in the status of a Mayavi, because Mayavi va'afilu Mayavis, still, he could marry a Meshachreres. Kol Gadim and Meshachrarim la yikri kol. The prohibition Mayavi b'kal Hashem doesn't apply. Frekta gewaltige Shaila, why are you telling me he made a condition? He set her free. Because if he's still a Mayavi, and she's a Shifcha, then the children will be servants, and then he can free them. And they would not be blemished anymore. If their mother was a liberated servant, the children would follow he, and he's blemished. And they would never be able to marry a Jew forever. You understand what happened? But by keeping her a maid, so now the children that he's going to have are going to be the children of a Shifcha, not the children of a Moabite, because I told you, when it comes to a non-Jewish woman or a non-Jewish Shifcha, the child follows exclusively the mother, not the father, only the lineage of the mother. So the child is not a Moabite, the child is an Eved. And if the Eved is set free, he's a regular Jew. And the problem of Moab is removed. So this was Yishai's idea. This is behind the Midrash. So now you understand what happened. You have to figure out this whole halachic issue. So the bottom line is that in the time of Yishai, the halacha of Mayavi, V'loi Mayavis, was not clear yet. Yishai was scared that one day it will become clear that he himself is not allowed to marry a regular Jewish woman. So what can he do now? Can he have any children who will not be of Moabite descendants and will be able to marry ordinary Jewish spouses? His 7 sons will not be able to, because their father comes from Rus, and if Mayavi va'afilu Mayavis, they're disqualified from marrying forever. Thousands of years they can't marry a Jewish wife. So what did he do? So he came up with a brilliant idea. He's going to marry his servant, his non-Jewish maidservant. Now, he made a condition. If the halach is Mayavi v'loi Mayavis, you're free from tonight. Here is your document of freedom. Get shichur. You're a regular Jewish woman, and I married you. Fine, no problem. This is the days when polygamy was still not forbidden. What happens if I am in the status of a Moabite? Mayavi v'afilu Mayavis. You're a maid. You're a maid. The child that will be born will have the status of an Eved, of a servant like his mother. But once he's freed from being a servant, he's a regular Jew. And this is the Mishnah in Kedushin. Reb Tarfon says that every mamzer has a way of getting rid of the gene of mamzeris. How? The mamzer marries a shifcha, marries a non-Jewish maid. The child is an eved. When he's liberated, he's a regular Jew. And that's why Yishai wanted to marry his maid, who was not Jewish, but when she's free, she would become Jewish. Or when her son is free, he would become Jewish. What happens is now his maid knew that he's wrong. The halacha is my avi v'loi my avis. That's what the Rameh continues. Now we continue further. V'hinei hashivcha hanemenes. The loyal maid, v'yoidas, she knows, shekein, halacha, revachas, lahatires, anoshim, ibneis, amon, umoyav, lovei, bekot. She knows the truth that the halach is that a woman from Ammon and Moav is allowed to marry a Jew. So Yishai has no issue, Ruth had no issues, Yishai's children have no issue. There was no reason that he ever separated from his wife. It was an extra piety that was not necessary. Yishai could have remained married to his wife. There was no need for separation. He didn't need this whole shtick that I'm explaining to you, how he would kasher his future children. It wasn't a problem. She knew the truth. Masro Simonin liishtai shel Yishai. She gave over the signs to the wife of Yishai. Snua lebayla lema'alosa, who at that time was rejected by her husband because of her virtue. He thought he's unworthy. Sometimes you reject something not because you hate it, but because it's beyond you. But the Shivcha knew that it's not a problem. He could be with his wife. He's a regular Jew. He's allowed to marry anybody. His children are fine. There's no need to marry a Shivcha. David. From this story, David was born. From this moment, David was born. In one of the versions of the Midrash, it says that the two women consulted somebody if Yishai was right or wrong. And he said Yishai is wrong. Mayavi v'loy mayavis. Who was it? It's been suggested. There was a member in Yishai's court. His name was Achi HaShiloini. Achi HaShiloini, this is brought. Achi HaShiloini left Egypt. He lived very, very long, as the Rambam explains in the introduction to Mishnah Torah. He was still in the Beis Din of David. If this is the case, we now have everything full circle. Based on the Brisker Rav's explanation, we didn't know if it was one of the Yud Gimel Midas or it's Halacha L'Moshe Sinai. Achi HaShiloini was there in the beginning. He was there by Har Sinai. He said it's Halacha L'Moshe Sinai. If it's Halacha L'Moshe Sinai, it's non-negotiable. If it's non-negotiable, Yishai doesn't have to worry. Even in 1,000 years from now, no Beis Din will be able to refute this halacha. Yishai doesn't have to worry about his children. He doesn't need this whole shtick with his maid. Achi HaShiloini told him it's not a problem. So the Shivcha came and she gave over the Simonim to his wife, and from this David was born. Comes the Raman, says weiter, Amnam yoideya tzadikoi shalaylam. The one who leads justice in the world knows din dalim. He knows the justice of impoverished people. God knew that the souls of these people have to emerge into the world silently. Nobody could know what's happening. Nobody can see clearly how they're emerging into the world. We're going to explain what the Rameh means here with these last words. It has to be silent in the next class. This is the story of Yishai. This is what he did. And as we learned before, 28 years later, everything emerged. Zeh hayom asa Hashem nagil v'nismach habai. But here we're confronted with one major question, and that is, why? Why did it have to happen this way? Rabbi Menachem Azariah says, God knew that the souls had to be born silently. This is how David's soul had to be born. Why? Why is it that the most important family of Israel, the family of kingship, the family of royalty, the family of Mashiach, which begins with David HaMelech, for generations we're not even sure that they could marry Jews, that they're full-fledged Jews. Even if the verdict is Amayavi v'loy mayavis, and Ruth is kosher, and Yishai is kosher, and David is kosher, and Allah is kosher. You know the Maisa, yeah? There was a Jew, there was a man who was institutionalized in an institution for the mentally challenged. And finally, after years of working on himself and exhibiting great behavior, They decided to let him out. They gave him a note. You're not meshuga, you're not insane anymore, you're a normal person. The doctor signed it and they let him out. This Jew is let out, approaches another man in the street. Shalom Aleichem, how are you? He says, tell me, are you a normal person? Are you sane? The man walking in the street says, I hope so, I think I'm normal, I think I'm sane. He says, do you have a note showing it? He says, I don't have a note showing it. He takes out a note, he says, I have a note that I'm normal. You don't have a note that you're normal. Obviously, I'm far more sane than you are. Of course, he needed a note. The other one didn't need a note. David HaMelech, we have a note. It's fine. We have a note that you're a regular Jew. After hundreds of years of debates and questions and dilemmas, we decided this is how it should be. The king of the Jewish people, the family of royalty, the family of which Mashiach is going to come. And for generations, they're not sure. Yeah, Yid, Nishken Yid, semi-Jew, almost a Jew, yet could marry, not marry, with all these mices and debates. Why? What's the meaning of this? Why does it have to be this way? This we explore in our following class. Stay tuned. Next Monday night. Have a good night.